September 29, 2023. After 27 years, Las Vegas police arrest Duane Keefe D. Davis for the murder of Tupac Shakur. The headlines scream justice at last, but here's what they don't tell you. This arrest didn't happen because of some breakthrough investigation. It happened because a man had been confessing to his role in the murder on camera for over a decade, and the authorities knew about it the entire time. The question isn't why they finally arrested him. The question is why it took so long. What were they hiding, and what are they still hiding? This is the story of missing files, buried evidence, and a cover-up that kept one of America's most famous murders unsolved for nearly 3 decades. The year is 1996, September 7th, 11:15 p.m. Tupac Shakur is sitting in the passenger seat of a black BMW on the Las Vegas Strip. The car stops at a red light at the intersection of Flamingo and Koval. A white Cadillac pulls up alongside them. 4 shots ring out. Tupac is hit 4 times. 6 days later, he's dead. Within hours, witnesses are describing the white Cadillac. They have partial license plates. They have descriptions. But something strange happens. The investigation stalls almost immediately. Key witnesses aren't properly interviewed. Evidence isn't collected. And when journalists start asking questions, they're told the case files are missing. Fast forward to 2018. The Center for Investigative Reporting files a lawsuit against Las Vegas Metro Police demanding they release their files on the Tupac murder. After years of legal battles, the police finally produced their records. The result? A 2-page police report. That's it. 2 pages for one of the most high-profile murder cases in American history. But here's where it gets interesting. While Las Vegas police claimed they had almost no files, the FBI was sitting on over 4,000 pages of documents about Tupac, and they weren't sharing. Of those 4,000 pages, only 104 were ever released to the public. The rest remained classified under national security exemptions. Why would a rapper's murder be considered a matter of national security? The answer might lie in what the FBI knew before Tupac was killed. The released FBI documents reveal that Tupac was receiving credible death threats from the Jewish Defense League, a militant organization that the FBI believed was running an extortion racket targeting rap stars. The files describe a scheme where the JDL would threaten rappers with death, then demand payment for protection. Tupac was their primary target. But the FBI knew about these threats and did nothing to warn him. They had informants, they had evidence, they watched it happen. Now here's where the story gets even stranger. The man who would eventually be arrested for Tupac's murder, Keefe D, had been talking about his involvement for years. Not in secret, not in whispered confessions, on camera, in documentaries, in interviews, even in a book. In 2008, Keefe D sat down with LAPD Detective Greg Kading as part of a task force investigating both Tupac and Biggie's murders. Kading had been given immunity deals to offer witnesses in exchange for information. Keefe D took the deal and confessed everything. He described how his nephew, Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, was the shooter. He explained the motive, a fight that had happened earlier that night at the MGM Grand between Anderson and Tupac's crew. He detailed the planning, the execution, and the aftermath. It was all on tape. But then something happened that Kading didn't expect. Just as he was preparing to make arrests based on these confessions, his task force was suddenly disbanded. The investigation was shut down. Kading was reassigned. All the evidence was sealed. I had solved both cases, Kading later said. We had confessions, corroborating evidence, everything we needed, but I was told to stand down. Why? Who had the power to shut down a federal task force that had just solved 2 of the most famous murders in American history? The answer might be found in those missing FBI files. Because the FBI wasn't just watching Tupac, they were watching Death Row Records, the label he was signed to. They were investigating its founder, Suge Knight, for connections to organized crime. They had informants inside the music industry. They knew about the East Coast, West Coast rap war that was tearing hip-hop apart. In other words, they saw this coming. They knew the players, they knew the tensions, they knew someone was going to get killed. And when it happened, instead of coming forward with what they knew, they buried it. The cover-up wasn't just about protecting the killers. It was about protecting the system that allowed it to happen. It was about hiding the fact that the FBI had advanced knowledge of credible threats against Tupac and did nothing to prevent his murder. But secrets have a way of surfacing. After Kading's task force was disbanded, he wrote a book about his investigation. He went on podcasts. He gave interviews. He kept talking about what he had discovered. And slowly, the story started to get out. Meanwhile, Keefe D kept talking too. In 2018, he appeared in a documentary called Death Row Chronicles and openly discussed his role in Tupac's murder. In 2019, he published a memoir called Compton Street Legend, where he detailed the shooting. He gave interviews to journalists, appeared on podcasts, and even spoke to police again. For 5 years after going public with his confession, Keefe D walked free. Why? Because arresting him would mean reopening the case files. It would mean revealing what the authorities knew and when they knew it. It would mean admitting to decades of cover-up. The arrest finally came in 2023, but only after a Netflix documentary series called Unsolved brought renewed attention to the case. Public pressure became too intense to ignore. But even now, as Keefe D sits in jail awaiting trial, the most important questions remain unanswered. Russell Poole, the LAPD detective who first investigated connections between the murders and police corruption, died of a heart attack on August 19, 2015. He was meeting with federal agents about new evidence in the case when he collapsed. His files disappeared after his death. Orlando Anderson, the alleged shooter, was killed in an unrelated gang shooting in 1998. He never faced charges for Tupac's murder, despite being the prime suspect from day one. Yaki Gaddafi, a member of Tupac's group who was in the car when the shooting happened and could have identified the shooters, was accidentally shot and killed 2 months after Tupac's death. He was killed by Roddy Bill, the cousin of his childhood friend Napoleon, in what was determined to be an accidental shooting. One by one, key witnesses and investigators either died or were removed from the case. Whether by design or circumstance, the people who could have provided answers were no longer available to tell their stories. What's in those 3,896 pages of FBI files that remain classified? What did the government know about Tupac's murder? Who ordered the cover-up? And why are they still protecting information about a 27-year-old case? Keefe D has pleaded not guilty to the charges against him despite his years of public confessions. His lawyers argue that he was just talking and never actually participated in the murder, but his confessions are on tape. The evidence is overwhelming. So why is he now changing his story? Maybe because he knows that telling the truth about what happened that night would implicate people far more powerful than a retired gang member from Compton. Maybe because he knows that some secrets are still worth protecting, even from behind bars. The trial has been delayed multiple times, with prosecutors citing new evidence that needs to be reviewed. What new evidence? After 27 years, what could possibly be new about this case? Unless, of course, someone is finally ready to open those sealed files. Tupac once said, "I'm not saying I'm gonna change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world." Even in death, he's still sparking brains, still asking uncomfortable questions, still demanding justice. The murder of Tupac Shakur wasn't just the killing of a rapper, it was the silencing of a voice that challenged the system. And the cover-up that followed wasn't just about protecting the killers, it was about protecting the forces that allowed it to happen. 27 years later, we're still waiting for the truth. We're still waiting for those files to be released. We're still waiting for justice. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the cover-up was never meant to be perfect. Maybe it was just meant to last long enough for people to forget, for witnesses to die, for evidence to disappear. The missing FBI files are still out there. The truth is still waiting to be told. And somewhere in those classified documents is the answer to the question that has haunted hip-hop for nearly 3 decades. Not just who killed Tupac Shakur, but why it took so long to find out, and what forces have been working to keep it buried ever since.